Hey everyone, welcome to Shiloh Ranch Church. At Shiloh Ranch, we have a lot of activities constantly going on. We have what's called the 1017 Project, which supplies food to families in need. We have the Firewood Project in the winter, which supplies firewood to families in need. We have amazing worship and scripture-based sermons every single Sunday, and we have an awesome team that you will get to meet along the way. But without further ado, let's head into the service.
Good morning, Shiloh Ranch Church Online. Thank you for being here. Levi, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. What do we got going on today?
Well, today we have Jordan Weaver preaching live.
Wow, the Jordan Weaver.
Yeah, so very excited to hear the word he's bringing, and yeah.
Wonderful. We've got worship coming next, and then, like Levi said, jumping into the sermon, and then we'll wrap up with some worship, and Levi and I will be sprinkled in there throughout. But yeah, it's going to be a great day. Comment below where you're watching from and just some stuff about you. I always like to know that. You can request prayer on the online platform. If you're watching on Facebook, go to the online platform and you can request prayer there. You can take notes, all of the regular stuff.
Yep.
But anyway, we're about to go into worship.
Sweet.
So sit and stand wherever you're at, and we'll see you after that.
I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow no turning back, no turning back. And though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. No turning back, no turning back. And I've decided, I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. My everything, all I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you my everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you my everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you. Yeah, God, help us to bring all that we are, all that we have to you. God, that we would decide to follow Jesus. And though none may go with us, we'll leave behind this world and march to you. God, help us to not rely on the things of this world, because we know our forever home is with you. We love you, we worship you. Amen.
Alrighty, we're back. We're about to go into the sermon. Jacob.
We've got, like you said earlier, we've got Jordan in
Yep.
the studio with a new sermon this week. I'm excited. Take notes during. We always say, please ask questions. Jordan does a great job explaining things, and I may not really even have questions at the end of it, but just talk to us about it. Expand everything. Give us your thoughts on it and experiences and so on. But yeah, so we're going into the sermon. Then after that, we'll go straight into worship. So please sit and stand wherever you're at for that. And then we'll see you after that.
Sweet.
Okay, welcome. We are, if you're watching this, you are either in Wickenburg or online. Welcome. So Insider Baseball, we record these on Saturday for the online campuses or the digital campuses, places like Wickenburg. Welcome. And so one of the things I've been excited about with the gathering specifically in Wickenburg is that it feels like we've done it long enough now. It's starting to become a family there. You're starting to see a lot of more familiar faces. Had a cool baptism service there. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, do that. But one of the main goals of the online campus this year is homes and hometowns. We want people to feel comfortable with the idea of attending a digital campus, seeing how it works, and then being able to replicate that when they leave and go home. I know there's like a large group of people that are starting to kind of do the migration north this time of year, and so we'd love to think it's something you could take home and have a group there in your home. I know sometimes people are far enough out, it's hard to do church in a traditional format, and so homes sometimes work better. You can pre-download them. You can download them a week in advance so that you're not having to depend on internet service. There's 1,000 different things. It feels like I'm cheating. If I'm being honest, it feels like I'm cheating a little bit because for years and years and years and years and years, to be a good teacher meant you had to be a good reader, and to be a good reader means you had to have an attention span that allowed you to sit in a desk or at an office and take in information. You know, leaders are readers, right? And I think that the two problems that presented was it limits leadership to a very specific type of learner, like a certain type of person who's able to just really sit and stay focused, people nothing like myself. Or secondly, and maybe I lived through this one a little bit more, was that it slowly kills the people who hate it but feel obligated to it. I know that for years it was like the number one stress in my life was I just didn't want to sit and read. I loved information. I liked information. I didn't want to sit still. And so this listen while you work concept is the emerging idea, and I love it. My headphones are on all the time. I'm going to talk to you today about stuff that I'm learning through the BEMA podcast, BEMA, Marty Solomon, if you want to look it up. I have absolutely no hesitation telling you, like, that has been my main source of study in the last, I don't know, probably month. And I get to do that while I'm outside and doing stuff and working, and, you know, whether I'm riding horses or roping or driving or whatever the case may be. And I think I love the leadership structure that's allowed to develop around that. I might say it this way. We're in a 2-week series. We're starting to this week. We're going to go next week, 2-week series. I'm going to preach them both today. We'll listen to this one this week and then next one next week. But the title of the series is Daddy Issues, and I'll explain as we go. But one of the things that I think the church is starting to move out of is the daddy issue of approval seeking or traditions. Okay, we do it this is the way we're told, and, you know, we're afraid of disapproval. And it feels like we're starting to realize, like, hey, maybe God is moving his people, his body, into a new direction that includes things like digital, online. I've got friends that don't attend a church in person, and I'm not sure where I'm at on that exactly. But some of the deepest, most meaningful spiritual conversations I'm having are with people that God is allowing to wrestle through some of that right now. I'm going to read 10 verses, which, if you know me, you know how excited I am about reading in front of people. Genesis 41, I cannot get away from reading. It's going to be a part of my life. Genesis 41:15, please do this. Please challenge yourself to hear what we're saying this morning, because we're covering a lot of ground that you probably are somewhat familiar with, some things that you've already heard. Challenge yourself to really listen to what's being said. I think there's more in here maybe than what we've seen at a glance. Verse 15 of Genesis chapter 41 says, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, in my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. You're like, yeah, I know, I've heard this one. Stick with me. Verse 19, we're 4 verses in, 6 more to go. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as in the beginning. Then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Now, keep in mind, told it to the magicians. In my mind's eye, I always think of like this, like 3 little Merlins sitting in the corner looking confused. But this was Egypt. This was a highly developed nation. There were a lot of Egyptians, and this was something they were very into. The enchanters, the powerful things that went on there were remarkable. And it says that he had run it by everybody, and nobody understood it. I mentioned the BEMA podcast, and one of the things I'm starting to draw from that is that the way the Bible teaches matters. It's just a foregone conclusion that the Bible is a series of stories. It's lineages. It's the stories, the characters, the heroes. I mean, there's been however many movies made by the stories that were told in the Bible, but the fact that it uses stories is important. We know it uses stories, but I wonder if we ever stop to realize how important that is. The Bible doesn't give us the truth of life in formulas or strategies or in math equations. It doesn't talk about a laboratory where all the things lined up exactly perfectly. No, it's in the field, it's in the house, it's in the homes, it's in the lives of the people. And when the Bible tells us stories in that way, it allows us to find ourselves in those stories. There are powerful images and characters and truths that are found in a story of a person who'd been cast away and forgotten, being brought up out of prison, speaking to somebody that was unimaginably powerful, somebody that to the Egyptians represented the go-between between the gods and man, sitting here listening to someone, asking him a question, and all of his future and all of his past coming together in one moment. I was helping today for a little bit. I wasn't out there for a long time. I'm not going to pretend it was something it wasn't, but I was out there today during the log splitting party that we had at church for the firewood program. And if you notice, when there's a lot of guys in one place, and a few girls, but a lot of guys in one place, it seems like there's one thing in common. There just wasn't much talking. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of chainsaws and, hydraulic wood splitters, and there was a lot of things happening, but sometimes guys tell stories amongst themselves in weird ways. There's people I haven't seen in a couple months, and I don't walk up and like, hey, how's it been? How's the kids? Like, people that I haven't seen for a while, they're like, hey, what's up? And then pretty soon we're throwing wood into a trailer. I mean, it's sometimes men specifically tell stories in weird ways. I want to, like I said, the series this week is Daddy Issues, and let me explain to you what that means. We all have stories, going back to the biblical reference, we all have stories about our fathers. If you're thinking to yourself like, wait a minute, I didn't have a dad. Biologically, that's impossible. I don't mean it's a good story. I don't mean it's a story that you love. I don't mean it's a story that brings you encouragement. Maybe it is. Hopefully it is. It can also mean, hey, my dad was gone. That's still a story. There is still a story and there's still an impact. Sometimes your dad's your hero. Sometimes your dad is this unimaginably, heroic figure, and sometimes it's somewhere in the middle of that. But whatever the case may be, we hope that we would get a dad that would defend us, that would bring us opportunities and open doors for us. Not everybody gets that. But every time dads are involved, they create exponentially more influential impacts. This is not to take away from the moms at all. This is not to take away from other people who have had impacts in your life at all. Don't read more into what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm focusing specifically on the fathers, that when fathers are involved, because of who they are in our lives, even if they do something damaging, being gone creates influence. Being absent can create influence. I think dads sometimes can do more on accident than other people could do intentionally. My point is, we've all got some level of a daddy issue that we're working through, some balance that we're trying to find between who we want our dad to be and who he is, who we imagine or imagined him to be, who we found out that he was. It's interesting that when they check with kids, when they talk to kids imagine God's voice as sounding like, guess who? Their father's voice. It's a big deal. It's an important issue that I think deserves being kind of looked at for a second. 2 weeks, to be exact. If you're taking notes, I want to encourage you to take notes. One of the things I've found is that when I take notes on something, I'm able to recall more than if I'm just casually listening. So 3 points. I want you to listen for these 3 points. One is limited father, appeal to authority, and adoption. Limited father, appeal to authority, adoption. 1 Samuel, to drive this point home about our confusion between God and our fathers. 1 Samuel chapter 3, Samuel had been consecrated to the temple. He was going to live there as a boy. Eli was the priest, and he's laying there in the temple, and it says that the Lord called out to Samuel. Who called out to Samuel? The Lord. God begins to interact with Samuel. Samuel answered, "Here I am," and he ran to his father figure. He runs to Eli, this paternal figure in this story of Samuel, because remember, stories. He runs to the person he equates as being this paternal figure and goes, "Here I am." It happens 3 times. Finally, Eli goes, "Oh, wait. God's taking you beyond my influence. God's going to take you beyond my influence." So the next time the Lord calls, say, "Here I am." So that's the basis. There's the foundation. Here we start in Genesis chapter 37. Again, story you've heard. Please understand, I know that you've heard it. I'm asking that if you're going to get the good out of this, try to hear what we're discussing as though it's new information. It says, now Israel, Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. That's not the only reason why. He also loved Joseph more because Joseph was the firstborn son of his favorite wife, Rachel. Remember, Jacob had married Leah. He'd been tricked by Laban into marrying Leah. They would describe her as being unfortunate looking. First, he gets tricked. 7 years later, he works for Laban 7 more years, and he gets Rachel. Rachel was the one he was after the whole time, and Joseph was the firstborn son to Rachel. He made an ornate robe for him. That wouldn't have been uncommon for him to have a robe, but to make an additional robe, what he's saying is you are the Behor. And what that means is you are the Esau in this situation. You are the firstborn that I'm acknowledging. You're the one that gets the double portion of the blessing. You're the one that's going to get all the responsibility of the home. And he doesn't even hide it. He's a good dad. He's a loving dad in a sense. He loves him, but he goes beyond what is good for Joseph. And he leads Joseph to believe that he's somehow this magical, special figure. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Who could have seen that coming? I feel like maybe that one was predictable. They plotted to kill him. He comes out to check on him in the fields. They see him. They go, we're going to kill him. It's interesting. It's Reuben. Reuben was the actual firstborn son of Jacob. That was the first son of Leah, the less fortunate looking but fertile Leah. And it says Reuben, who should have been the Behor, who should have been the one that's going to receive the double portion of the blessing, the one who rightfully stood what had been given to Joseph was going to have been given to Reuben. It was Reuben that speaks up, ironically, and says, let's not kill him. Reuben should have been, if there was anybody in this group that would have made sense, it would have been Reuben. If you go, well, I just can't believe that people would, hold on a minute. They weren't living in the United States in 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 1970. They were living in a culture where this kind of stuff happened. Not saying it's good, it happened. Reuben, if anybody was going to kill Joseph, could have been the one leading the charge. Instead, he says, he tried to rescue him from their hands and said, let's not take his life. He said, don't shed any blood. Throw him into a cistern here in the wilderness. Don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. There's a little moment that Joseph wouldn't have known. Joseph didn't know that Reuben had played a part in this. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty and there was no water in it. Reuben comes back later, no Joseph. But in the meantime, verse 31. Then they got to Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, dipped the robe in blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, we found this. Examine it to see if it's your son's robe. Oh, we found this in the wilderness. It's so weird. Do you think this is Joseph's robe? He recognized it and said, it is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on, and mourned for his son many days. Limited fathers, for you guys that did what I said to do and are taking notes. I can see two different responses. People are like, okay, you said take notes. Okay, we'll take notes. I see the other response is, I'm not taking notes. I don't care what you say. Limited fathers. He was sold into slavery, and Jacob didn't come rescue him. If you think about it, if you're sitting in a cistern and you're your father's favorite son, and he has made it known to everybody who would ask, and even people who wouldn't, this is my favorite son. As you're sitting in a cistern, you've got to be thinking, well, it's okay. I'm here right now, but it's okay. My dad's going to come find me. I'm fine. My dad loves me. He loves me more than those guys. He'll come find me. And boy, when he does, oh, I am going to sing. I'm telling all the details. But then he was sold into slavery. He doesn't know that Jacob was told a lie. He doesn't know that they ruined his coat, his nice coat. He doesn't know any of that. He doesn't know that his father was deceived. He doesn't know that Jacob got tricked, ironically, because that was the theme that followed Jacob's life. He doesn't know any of that. All he knows is my dad's going to come get me, and the next thing he knows, he's sold into slavery. This is probably the first time he felt failed by his father. I'm going to argue in a second that his father had failed him before this, but it would have been the first time that he felt failed by his dad. Like, hey, what happened? Where were you? I just assumed that you were going to show up. Daddy issues. Like, I thought you were going to come to my birthday party. I thought you were going to support us. I thought you were going to love mom forever. I didn't think you were going to cause damage in my life. I thought you were going to be this person that opened doors for me, and instead it's like you're making my life harder. We've all got issues with dads because dads are limited. They are just limited. They steal his coat. They throw him in a pit. Favorite son, limited father. Favorite son to a limited father. Steal his coat, throw him in the pit. Dad's going to fix this. He doesn't fix it. Joseph's badness plays a role in this because he was kind of an arrogant little jerk. I'm not saying what his brothers did is right. I do see how what Joseph did led to it. I can also see how what Jacob did led to it. Everybody is involved here. Everybody has things they could have done differently. Joseph was a spoiled little jerk, but I don't think that's uncommon when your dad spoils you. Remember, limited father. Sometimes dads cause harm by not doing enough. Sometimes dads cause harm by trying to do more than what they should. Listen to this in Matthew chapter 7 to paint a picture from the word. Matthew chapter 7, verse 9. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you, then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children. See, what he's saying is, even though I love that Jesus would use words that was just spicy. He would be like, if you, even though you're evil, can give good gifts to your kids. You're like, well, that's upsetting. Well, you stopped and listened. How much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. He's saying, I know that you try, but you're limited. I know that you're trying to be a good parent, and you don't even get it right. How much more will I get it right when I'm an unlimited God? Even if you have the best father who tries and does everything he can do. Even if you've got one of those dads that they write books about, your dad is the hero. I've got a good dad. If your dad's like the hero of your story, if that's the situation that you find yourself in, let me prepare you. Even then, you will have to face and forgive his humanity. That is hard. That is hard when kids find out that their dads are not quite as great as they thought. Not that they're not good people, but that they're human. When they see the wizard behind the curtain, it is a difficult thing to face and forgive the humanity in a good dad. But let me tell you something. If your dad's a terrible dad, same thing. Everybody wants their dad to be a good dad. Some are, some aren't. But in every situation, when you realize the limited nature of your dad or of the people that God has put in charge over you, when you realize they're just people, to forgive. I've heard somebody say, if you can forgive your parents, you can forgive anybody. Jacob loved Joseph, but in a large way failed him. Remember I said getting sold into slavery is probably the first time Joseph felt failed by his father. His dad failed him way before that, not by abandoning him, but by propping him up, making life too easy for Joseph, giving Joseph things that Joseph really didn't deserve. So let's go to Genesis 39. Again, I know you've heard all this. Please stick with me. If you haven't, it'd be really, really cool. It's a good story. But if you have, try to listen as though you haven't. Genesis 39, he got sold into slavery. Verse 2 says, the Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. In the house. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate. Joseph finds himself in a father-son scenario again. How could it be more than this? He lives in the house with Potiphar. Potiphar gives him everything he's got, gives him charge of everything he's got, doesn't concern himself except with what he eats, and gives Joseph all of the reign of everything. This is another father situation. Again, a limited father, but here we find Joseph in the same situation. It says he did not concern himself with anything. Commentators will speculate that included his wife. Potiphar didn't pay much attention to his wife, possibly. Let me tell you how I got there. Now, Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. I've always heard that he refused because he's like, no, I am a man of God. It wouldn't be right. It's immoral. It goes against my faith. And maybe that's what he's saying. But listen closer. It says, with me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you because you're his wife. It's also possible that Joseph is saying, I can't do this. The cost is too great. You can almost hear it either way. I can't do that. Look at all it would cost me. Almost like if you think about who Joseph was, oh, look, you're all going to bow to me when he's talking to his brothers, and you fast forward, you almost hear a little hint of that again, of like, I could never look at what it would cost me. No one's greater than I am in his house. Why would I do this? The cost is too great. So remember, his badness kind of contributed to the first time he had his coat stolen and was thrown in a pit. This time, it's his good behavior. Listen to this. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. Look, she said to him, this Hebrew has been brought to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of his house. Verse 16. So she kept his cloak beside her until his master came home, and then she told him this story. I think religion does this sometimes, that religion like brings us out of our badness and then we overcorrect and we become really good. Both ways. Joseph was kind of a knucklehead and he ends up in a pit. Then he decides, that's it. I'm going to be really good. When his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, this is how your slave treated me. He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. So again, his coat is stolen. He's thrown in a pit. The first time his coat was stolen and thrown, his favor, let's say it this way. The first time his favor was stolen, he was thrown into a pit. It would be easy to go, my father failed me. He didn't see this coming. He didn't come save me, and I was sold. The second time he goes, but this time I was doing good. I did good things, and my favor was stolen, and I was thrown into a pit by a father who didn't see the injustice. It's interesting because I think if Joseph was in essence a slave and had actually tried to sleep with Potiphar's wife, and Potiphar had actually believed that, I think he would have had him put to death. The fact that he had him thrown into prison means that somewhere in there, Potiphar probably might have known the kind of woman he was married to. So, sold off and forgotten again. He starts as a favored child. He goes to becoming a favored servant. But he's always had favor. He's always known that he's got someone in an important position overlooking him. Somebody that's in important, this is what a dad does. I mean, this is what we hope a dad does. There's someone in a higher, elevated, powerful position, knows who we are, loves us, is looking out for us, and no matter what happens, they're going to be there for us. What you see is about, what we're going to see of Joseph in prison is about as far away from that as a person can go. He goes from being a favored, protected person to being a favored, protected person to someone who is now saying things that important, favored people don't say. He's in prison with all the king's servants. He's saying things like, tell someone important about me so that I can escape from my insignificance. Tell someone important. Tell someone in power about me. This is what happens when we have daddy issues, when our dad has failed us in a way that really wipes the legs out from under us, is that we're going, okay, I need someone new. I need someone new who's going to be powerful and notice me and see me and really see my potential and realize what I have to offer the world. And we start hoping that somebody in the powerful position will take notice of us. Find me a dad who will come search for me. He's interpreting dreams, and as they go back out to Pharaoh, he's saying, don't forget about me. I'm down here. I'm forgotten. I'm cast away. Find a dad who will come search for me, someone who would notice if I'm not there. And I know this is going to strike a chord because I know that sometimes our limited fathers don't come search for us in a way that we wish they would. Again, I want to reference, I've got a good dad. But every dad is limited. Every dad is going to be limited in how they're able to come search for us, and especially in times where God is bringing us through processes that our limited fathers don't understand. This is what he said in verse 14. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. Do you see? That's not someone who believes that they're remembered. This is not someone who believes that powerful people know who they are or see their cause. This is so easy to see in people, like, tell so-and-so about me. Don't forget about me. Post it on social media and share it to important things. I was forcibly, listen to this, an appeal to authority. Tell someone important about me. And I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews. And even here, I've done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon. See, he's pleading his own case. See, I think sometimes when you have a real healthy dad concept or a real healthy God concept, we don't feel like we need to defend ourselves. We know that God's at work. We know that God's got things going on in our lives. But sometimes when our earthly fathers don't paint a picture that's that easy to understand, it's easy for us to feel like, okay, it's on me now. Tell important people about me. This isn't my fault. I was innocent. Remember me. All of that. This has all been a ramp to this point right here. Third point for taking notes is adoption. So Pharaoh has this dream They send for the guy in prison who can apparently interpret dreams, Joseph. And Joseph gets all cleaned up and he brings him out and listen to this. Let's see if the story starts to sound a little different. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream and there's no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph doesn't say, yeah, I'm pretty good. You should definitely let me live here. Somewhere between remember me and get me out of here to Pharaoh, whatever period of time, you can tell there's been this acceptance of like, God's got to do something. It's got to be God or it's not going to work. Because he said, it's not me. It's not in me. Oof. It's not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. What you're looking for comes from God, not from me. That's a different heart than the son who broadcasts his dream prematurely to his brothers. Verse 17. I love this so much. I'm going to tell you, let me just pause for a second. I love so much what we're about to discover. I've never heard this before. I had no idea this was in here, and I've heard this story 1,000 times. It says, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, in my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile, 7, plump and attractive. Now, we're in the cattle business. I know what it means to have like cows. You're like, oh man, that's a good looking cow. But the description is different. Plump and attractive. These are not words you would use to describe a cow. This is a word that the Bible actually uses to describe attractive young women. Young, attractive women. The Bible talks about young, attractive virgins, and this is the word. This is a young, attractive in a female, feminine, womanly sense. That is the word that it uses to describe the cows. And there were 7 of them. Came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows. How many? 7. It's important. 7. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. It doesn't just say thin. It actually, when you look it up, it says ill-favored. Ill-favored, weak-eyed. There's another term, weak-eyed. I want to reference something I already said in this sermon. I said that Leah was what? Unfortunate looking. Nothing else about the dream. It's almost like you can hear everything just fade into like this like buzz in Joseph's ears, because this wasn't a dream for Pharaoh. So it was a direct message from God to Joseph. There had been an adoption, and Joseph would have caught it. The words that the Bible uses to describe the cows are the exact same words that the Bible uses to describe Leah, ill-favored and weak-eyed, and Rachel, his mom. Nothing else mattered. This wasn't a dream about cows or corn. This was God saying, Joseph. You've got the magicians over there, and they're like, I don't know. I don't get it. You got Pharaoh, and he's like, I don't know. I don't get it. And Joseph is standing there just slack-jawed going, God's speaking to me. There's a chiasm. We've talked about chiastic structure, how it's ascending and descending, and there's a chiasm around the story of Joseph. And at the peak, remember the middle, that's where the value is found. And when you look at the value of this story of Joseph, it peaks that kind of just jammed in there sideways in a way that doesn't really make sense. In chapter 47, I think it is the lineage of Israel. And you're like, what are we doing here? Israel, Jacob, the story, the peak of the story of Joseph is that the lineage that he had came from is being described in this dream with Pharaoh. In the same manner, he's saying 7 years Leah, 7 years Rachel. Wait a minute, 7 years unfortunate looking cows, 7 years very favored cows. All of a sudden, God is speaking to Joseph in a way that is so personal, and he's describing the lineage. It says, I've been involved all along. Here's why that matters. Where do you go if you're Jacob and you want the best for your kid? If you want the best, as limited people, we are limited in our ability to be fathers, parents. If Jacob wanted the best for Joseph, selling him into slavery was probably not on that list, because he is limited. He can't see where it's going. He doesn't know what's going to happen. There's this transfer of power that took place when Joseph was sold into slavery. He was severed. He was broken from his limited earthly father. I think sometimes we need to let our dads off the hook. I think it's too convenient to blame our parents for everything that goes wrong, or to always have an excuse for why things go wrong and not consider that God is actively at work in your life. That where your dad fails, God picks up. Where the limited father stopped, God kept going. Jacob could have never brought Joseph in front of Pharaoh in a meaningful way. God goes about it in a way that no one understands until he begins to speak to Joseph in a way that's personal, in a way that Joseph couldn't have missed. I want to go back to Matthew chapter 7 for a second. Remember, it says, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? It says, how much more when you're adopted into the kingdom, when you start to think of God as personal and relational and involved in your life, it says this. It says, then it changes gears. I'll give good gifts. But then it changes in verse 12. It says, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. One of the things that Marty Solomon said in one of these podcasts, and I thought it was so accurate, is he said, forgiveness is the ultimate act of trusting the story. That forgiveness is saying, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. I'm letting it go because I believe God's taking me forward. I don't think there's any way that Joseph could have forgiven his brothers if all he saw was the failure of the people in his own life. When God speaks and goes, I've been involved from the very beginning. Joseph goes, I know what this means, Pharaoh. God uses Joseph as an instrument of salvation for his own family. That's why when his brothers come and he goes, oh, God was involved in all this. God was working through my parents' failure, through my circumstances, through my failure, through my bondage. If you're sitting here going, oh, I didn't have a good enough head start because I didn't have good parents, this story says that doesn't matter. This story says that God is invested in working through your story, the good parts and the bad. And he goes, no, what you intended for bad, God was involved in. You are just a part of a bigger piece. And when Joseph says, I'm going to forgive you, what he's saying is, I believe that God's telling a story, and I'm more interested in the story than getting the justice caught back up. It says he was able to forgive because he accepted his adoption. Joseph tells Pharaoh, here's what's going to happen. And he says it with such confidence because God made it clear that a limited father and an appeal to authority were not the point of the story. The point of the story was God's involvement all the way through. And let go of the things that are dragging you back. Let go of the things that are causing unforgiveness. Forgive your dad. Forgive your good dad. Forgive your bad dad. Forgive your good parents. Forgive your bad parents. Forgive your bad bosses. Let go of the things that are dragging you back. Because when you let go of those things, it's a trust. It's a trust that God is telling a story in your life that moves you forward. Let's pray. God, I think about my own dad. As a family of preachers, I preached about this before I talked to him about it. I'm sure he'll understand, but I know that there have been times in my life where I look back and there's things that I wish that my dad would have done differently. But if I cling to those failures of my dad, it doesn't allow me to acknowledge my failures as a dad. God, we're all being raised by limited fathers. We're all being raised by limited parents and authority structures. And God, when we feel abandoned, we start doing things like appealing to authority. Somebody help. Somebody important needs to notice me. Somebody important needs to help me. God, help us to identify places in our lives where the daddy issues are dragging us backwards. God, pressing forward to an adoption of an unlimited father who knows how to give good gifts. And when we accept that, we're able to love each other and forgive each other and not hold each other's feet to the fire because we know that you're using our stories to your benefit and to our benefit and to the benefit of those around us. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
When I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I scarce can take it in that on the cross my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. And then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. Oh, how great thou art! Oh, how great thou art! And then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! When Christ shall come with shouts of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart? Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great you are. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. Oh, how great thou art! Oh, how great thou art! And then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. Oh, how great thou art! How great thou art! How great thou art! How great thou art! And God, we just proclaim how good you are. And God, what a brave and humble thing to say. The day when our life is over, what joy shall fill our hearts. Because we're going home to you. We're going home to your goodness, your faithfulness, your love, your peace, your joy. So God, help us to wake up every morning and just say, God, you're so good. You're so loving. You're so kind. How great you are. Amen.
Thank you all for being here this week. I had a great time.
I did too.
Yeah, it's a great time.
Just a reminder, follow us on the social media, share the service with someone you know. It helps us out a lot. You can email srccpray@gmail.com anytime through the week or send us a message on Instagram for prayer. Love people around you.
Definitely. Yeah, I would say reach out. We love to talk to you guys. I mean, that's like one of our main focuses right now is you guys, community and communication and so on. And so for the online people, you don't have a physical building, but we have chat rooms, and places we can learn about each other there. So reach out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll see you next week. We'll be here same time, same place. Love people around you. And bye for now.
Bye for now.